recording part.
Perfect.
Okay, Kwe, Anin, Bojo, welcome to our 5th session of the Kikanaso Mokuzin Educator Training. And as a part of our collective efforts to improve the learning experience and enhance educator skills and knowledge, ACTUA and Canada have collaborated to create a free online training pilot program and guide. Our goal is to support K-12 teachers, other educators, and actual network members across Canada who are working with Indigenous students and communities in land-based education within the STEM and STEAM fields. Now, while this training is grounded in Indigenous knowledge, land-based knowledge of STEM, it is not meant to replace current local Indigenous knowledge or training. Instead, it is meant to provide educators and actual network members with a more in-depth understanding of Indigenous STEM. The training itself is grounded in science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics, and the Indigenous ways of knowing, using experiential learning and live sharing circles with Indigenous knowledge keepers and other STEM practitioners. And for today's session, we have Joseph, who is here, and I'm going to introduce Joseph. So Joseph Pitawanakwat is a member of the Pitawanakwat First Nation and resides on Manitoulin Island. He has a passion for healing properties of plants and shares his knowledge about nature, nature's healing modalities and sources, and the legitimacy of plant-based medicine. As a holistic health and plant educator, Joseph primarily uses 3 methods when researching any plant-based medicine: traditional proof, scientific proof, and the doctrine of signatures, an ancient method of interpreting plants by looking at their features. So I would like to welcome Joseph to today's session. And I just want to also let everyone know that before we, after Joseph's session is done, I think he's going to present for about maybe 30 minutes. And Dakota and myself are also going to do a short presentation as well on the Kikanaso Mokuzin program in regards to the northern direction of community and giving back. So I'm going to hand it over to Joseph now. And thank you, Joseph, for joining us today.
All right, give me one small second. Okay. Where are we? Here we are. Cool. So yeah, this will be fun. I have just a short little bit of time to be able to share with everybody just my experiences and I guess techniques when we're spending time with youth teaching about about plant medicine. And just a fair warning, I've been having some really incredible technology follies. It's been a pretty insane week, so hopefully everything will be okay for us here. But yeah, I'm really happy to get to spend some time with everybody here and just sort of talk about our interactions with the sciences and the way that we teach about these and all of the communities that we go to. So yeah, this will be super fun. Okay, so I guess my the first okay, you guys are still there. So yeah, okay. Oh yeah, okay. So I teach about plant medicine, and I really sometimes will like to use teaching about plant medicine, about Nishnabemshkike, use it like a vehicle to teach about other things. So one of the stories that I wanted to share with you guys right away is I remember I had one group, and they were young. I think they were ages 8 to 18, and I had the younger cohort for a part of some of the programming that we were doing, and it was awesome. I had all these young kids, and this was a sort of like outdoor education, science-based camp that we put on with Great Lakes cultural camps, and we had these huge plans, and it was turning out to be super fun. But I had this young group of kids, and I was like, wow, what can I do to, get them excited about science, and get them really engaged, and understanding that plant medicine knowledge is a really key cultural component that is very science-based, and is something that is very valuable, that they need to should learn about. So and we wanted to do this via a experience. And so, yeah, I had all these kids, and I wanted to sort of establish a connection between the students and where we were out on the land. I wanted to make sure that they had a connection between themselves and to creation. And that's sort of our first step in understanding well, I guess my main job, is motivating an individual, providing the motivation and inspiration for them to conduct their own learning, because we cover such a broad area, now working all across the country. Now there's all different sorts of cultures and different knowledges and different ecosystems and land masses and georegions that we're working with. And so I want to encourage everybody to learn about, to take the learning into their own hands, and create that desire to learn inside of them. So I need to make it necessary is one of the things that I got to do. And so, yeah, I had all these kids, and I wanted to just establish that connection between themselves and the land. So I'll just I could probably share without messing anything up. Oh man, things are very slow. I'm so scared. But if I share with us this, and I bust into a slide, there we go. Okay, so we should be good. So yeah, I one of the things that's really cool, when you look in creation stories, our Anishinaabe creation story, and then creation stories like all around the world, it's super fun. There's this really amazing consultation between the creator and everything that has already been created up until that point, which is everything except us. So we're like the last beings to be created, and what was used to make us was everything that was already here. So all of the plants and minerals and these sorts of things. And so in our creation story, there's there's a moment where the first little Anishinaabe is sitting inside of a shell, and that shell is a representation of all of the elements that make up Earth. All of creation already is represented by that shell. That's why we use the shells to carry fire around, because fire is something that should only happen on the land. And so we could have this representation of the land and use that to carry our, when we're smudging or whatever, we have that medicine inside of the shell where it's burning, where there's a fire. Anyways, that shell is a representation of all of the elements that make up Earth, that were responsible for creating our physical bodies. And the creator's contribution was to breathe spirit into us, to give us the opportunity to be the beings that we are now. And so everything that you see outside has been or was used to create you, is what is to be understood, I guess, in our creation story. So yeah, we have ideas of this that we can see, and so when we're outside with kids, we want to establish this connection. We'll just spend time with different plants. Every plant has a story that it's telling. And when you get the tools as an educator, the tools that you need to tap into those stories, to listen to those plants and hear, what parts of you did they create? More often than not, we're able to figure this out. So like I remember with this particular group, we were out on the land, and that was the first session, was to establish a connection between them and the land that they cannot deny. So we were at strawberries. There were some strawberries out. Everybody was munching in the little field. There was poison ivy there too, so we were scared. But I asked them about strawberries. What part of your body do you think strawberries were created? And so we call those demnan. Demin is a strawberry. That means heart berry or heart fruit. And so everybody just kind of had this knowing and said, well, your heart. And so I talked about some of the nutritional qualities of the strawberry, feeding specifically certain tissues inside of the heart, and then as well some of the plant chemicals that are inside of there having a positive physiological effect on the heart and vascular system entirely. And so to show them that, there's been a lot of science, a lot of studies that have looked at strawberries to identify them as a heart medicine. Most of which the medicinal compounds are in the leaves, but the strawberries and all of these corresponding plants have have the original instruction embedded within them. If they were responsible for creating these certain body parts, then they have the original instruction. And so when we have these body parts of us that are becoming diseased, becoming not working properly, then we need to consult with that original instruction to repair normal function to our body. So we need to consult with those plants to be able to correct certain functions that are gone awry inside of us and to heal. And so we were making that connection when we were outside, and we found some sweet fern. This is Gabaage Amish. And this one, I just asked them to look at it. You just look at this plant and you will understand what it is, how it can be used, and what it is good for. And one of the kids said that this looks like intestines. And so, yeah, he was exactly right. This is medicine that my grandmother would call nagajin shkeke, intestine medicine. And so in our practice, when we're teaching about medicine, like in a clinical capacity at whether it's working with hospitals and health centers or medical schools or with the, community itself, this is the medicine that we use for when there are things that are wrong with your intestines. And so everything from acute conditions, infections and gastro and things like that, to chronic disease, like even autoimmune driven diseases like ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. This is the medicine that we use to help correct that. And, just beyond the scope of this presentation to go into detail of each individual one, but I just wanted to share with you just that idea of connecting individuals to creation was one of my favorite things. We have even Gazib and Ashk, or scouring rush. Ecosidium hyemale. This is just in every community that I've ever been to. It's a very dominant plant. And so with the kids, we found this one, and I asked them, what is this going to be good for then? What part of your body did this plant help to create? And just framing it within the context of our creation story was super fun. They were grade 8 mostly, I guess, and so they were really abrasive to these ideas. But they looked at it and they said, well, bones, I guess, it looks like your spine. And then some of the high school students who were actually, did a little bit of biology were able to remember that inside of each joint you have this synovial fluid. They didn't remember what it was called, but it was this slippery lubricant layer inside of your joints that helps them move. And they noticed when they were listening to this plant, I actually encouraged participants to engage with it. Just go check it out, play around with it, touch it, move it around, break it up. And, because like my daughter, when she was growing up, you put any leaf into her hand and she'll turn it into just a million little pieces. So there's something, a part of like every stick that we grab, we'll just break it all up into a bunch of tiny pieces, as we walk throughout the forest. It's just something that most people do. So I just told them, grab it. And when they broke apart the joints on this plant, there was a slippery fluid. And so some of the older year participants said, this is like that inside of your joints. And so they were, establishing that connection. This obviously is one of the medicines that we use for our connective tissue. So bones, hair, skin, ligaments, joints, nails, everything. And this one, we'll actually come back to this one when we talk about the experiential engagement with this knowledge. But yeah, they were able to see, oh yeah, it looks just like your bones. And one of the cool things when they started to play around with it, they realized that there's like this really shiny crystallized dust that's in the outer portion of the plant, which is silica. This plant grabs silica from the soil, a really hard abrasive crystal, that we use to make glass, or that is glass, and it deposits it in the outer layer of the plant. And so that's where this plant gets all of its structural integrity, is from the really hard outside, and then it has a spongy part in the middle and a hollow center. So, we were able to see that this plant is structured just like every single bone in your body. There was this one, it was another fun one. This one is actually super cool, but it's our nimepin is in the top left there, or my top left, with the green heart-shaped leaves. And then the flower for that plant is in the bottom right, with the burgundy, purpley kind of color flower. But it was really fun because we got in front of this plant and I said, what about this one? And they said, well, your heart. And then it was super cool because I was like, well, look at the flower too. Well, look at the roots. When you're looking at the roots, they stay on top of the ground and they have this bluish, greenish color, just like the veins in your arm. And so the story becomes a little bit more complete the more you look at this plant, the more that you listen to it. They are incredible teachers. And so when we looked at the flower, that was the coolest part, because some of the students were able to say, hey, that shape, you don't see that shape too often. And it was very well hidden. The plant hides these flowers very well. But that Mercedes-Benz shape of the flowers, I gestured to just to the other side of the trail. We had a purple violet flower was growing, which has a heart-shaped leaf, and the flower turns into these, you see that little seed pod that has that Mercedes-Benz shape and all the seeds inside. And so we were looking at two different plants that had the same signature, the same story that they were telling. And so I was able to share with them that, yeah, when you look inside of your body, you could see your tricuspid valves, all have this same Mercedes-Benz sort of structure. And so, and that's the only part of our body that has that shape or that look, according to, anatomy and physiology, the way that we know it now. And so as we started to develop a really strong connection to all of these plants, to realize that they have this within the cultural context of these are the plants that are responsible for creating these body parts, and they have that original instruction to restore normal function to those corresponding parts, they started to develop a really neat understanding. And it was like every plant that we passed, they had to really inspect, had to really listen to. And some of us even got in the water, and we could see from the lily pad roots, they were really interested in all of these shapes. And then when we looked at the root part of the plant, they noticed, really specific structures, really specific shapes. And they wanted to know, what is this from? What does this look like? What is this medicine for? And so it is always called muscle medicine. And so when you look at your muscles, they have the same shapes and structures that we find inside of the roots. I could have had a better picture here for you guys, but I lost everything. So I had to start from scratch real fast. But yeah, the shapes of these roots, and I don't know if you guys can move the thing to be able to see what, when we're looking at liver medicine, all of our liver medicine, interestingly, has the leaves have 3 lobes, and the flowers have 6 sides, 6-sided flowers, like the benezit or the hepatica, and the gold thread will have the 3 lobes, leaves, and then have 6-sided flowers, and so the 3 lobes of your liver, and then the gold thread has bright yellow roots, just like we have bright yellow bile inside of our gallbladder. And then the structure of your liver is this hexagon shape. That's the structure of liver cells that are responsible for every function that the liver happens inside of these lobules. And so it didn't matter, everywhere that we looked, we could see reflections of ourselves. Even in some really common medicines, required a pretty detailed look. And so looking at Gijagandak, like Eastern white cedar, the students were able to see, like the story that this plant has to share is, you just look at what makes this plant special, what makes cedar different than all of the other plants in the world, and how what is its uniqueness, what can we learn from it. And so it's an evergreen, so it separates itself from all the deciduous trees that way, but then it's different than all of the evergreens in that it doesn't have a like a green, it doesn't have needles. It has green, flat, scaly looking leaves. And so they knew that this is what is special about cedar. This is how it is communicating to us. And so they wanted to know what part of us is this, it can be understood. And so I showed them images of what the part of your body that cedar helps with for detoxification, for endurance exercise, and then for immune function, activated immune function. So when you use cedar tea when you're sick, when you're going through intense activity, and then when you are need to detoxify. Your lymphatic system is probably one of the biggest detoxification systems that your body has. And so, when you look at your lymphatic system that is responsible for all of those things, this is the structure that it has. It's green, it's flat and scaly. It has these valves, and the branching patterns are all exactly similar to cedar. And so they were able to see, and then also learn about these parts of our body, what the lymphatic system does, how it grabs all of the fats from your small intestine and gets it inside of your muscles to be burned for energy during cardiovascular exercise, like a walk or a jog, and then how your lymphatic system is the highway inside of your body for your immune system. It's how your immune system transports itself, the lymphocytes, and delivers antibodies to actually kill the infection. That's the highway that your body uses. And if that highway is full of potholes and there's accidents and detours and all this garbage in the way, and it's not operating optimally, your immune system takes forever to get from place to place. Like if you're in the GTA, like imagine the 400 series highways are full of potholes on top of being, full of rush hour congestion. Now there's massive potholes, and it's just going to be a nightmare. And so, yeah, this part of your body, that's what it does. It detoxifies for energy and for your immune system. And so engagement with this plant to ensure that this part of your body is operating optimally, that was the connections that we were making. So we were learning lots about biology, anatomy, and physiology. We were learning lots, even sometimes about drug discovery, just playing around with this idea. That's my favorite idea, is that over 85% of every pharmaceutical drug that has ever been discovered comes from plants. Which most of us probably already had a pretty fair understanding of. So like everything that a doctor can do, they learn that from plants. When we think of that, for whatever reason, everyone will always think of like the Amazon or rainforests and Central America and jungles and those rare plants and scientific discovery there. But the reality is that most of the drugs that have been discovered from plants come from the Great Lakes region. So come right from our backyard, come right from our school grounds, come right from our education resource places, and come right from there. And so like we could walk past, 40, 50 different medications that doctors use, but in plant form. And when we're looking at that plant in plant form, we're looking at the total potential for total restoration and normal function. We're not looking at a diluted, profit-driven, experiment. We're looking at what this plant is supposed to do. So we are able to offer understanding this knowledge of to look at the opportunity of a greater sort of care of health. And kids are really, really fascinated with this idea. And I usually let it happen as organically as I can. When kids learn on their own, that's what they will never forget. And that's where they will develop motivation and their own motivation and inspiration. And so on the second day, after we established these connections, and playing around with all of these different types of plants, I said, well, what do you guys want to do? They said, well, can we make something? Can we make medicine? Because you're telling us all of these connections, and I'm thinking of everybody around me who is sick. And so they wanted to use that medicine to help. Obviously, there's ethical considerations and liability issues with this, but we chose something quite safe. It was really funny because there was they wanted to make diabetes medicine, and so that's what we were like, okay, let's make some diabetes medicine. And then there was this one kid, he was real big, like he was very overweight, and he was like listening to everybody talking about their aunties and grandpas they want to help, and grandmas, and he was like, you guys are all making me feel real bad because I just want to fix myself. And then everybody was like, what's going on? He was actually 7. He snuck in. He fudged his age because it was 8 to 18. He was 7, real bad kid. But he said, I have JRA, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, and I need and I just want to fix myself. And so everybody kind of looked at him and was like, I can make arthritis something for arthritis. So they started thinking about their family, and they realized in that moment, like, you know, according to epidemiology in Canada, arthritis is the number 1 disease that affects First Nations people. Number 2 is diabetes, but it's number 2, like it's arthritis is number 1 by a landslide. So everybody realized that in that moment when he asked for help for himself. And so everybody was like, let's make arthritis medicine then. Let's do that. You know, it'll be good for him, but I know lots of people who have issues. So we were consulting with Scouring Rush, and we were using willow, and we just collected that medicine, and I taught them how to make it. And I showed them with 1 pot, showed them how to make the tea. And I told them, you could go make that for your grandpa or your parents. You go do that tonight. And the next day, everybody went home. They made that medicine. They took packages home. They made that medicine. And then in the next day, the third day, the last day, I had content that I wanted to share with them, but I couldn't, because they were all having a conversation amongst themselves, because what had happened was they made that medicine and gave it to their family, and their grandpas and grandmas and aunties and uncles and parents that use that arthritis medicine woke up in the morning. That little boy with JRA woke up in the morning and knew there was something that happened, and that the remission and reversal was occurring. And because they woke up right out of bed and then called them right away, like, hey, I drank that medicine, and I didn't even do exercises this morning. I just rolled out of bed and made my coffee. And they could see it in their parents, like their parents slept all night. You know, that pain didn't wake them up at 4 a.m. They didn't wake up until you know, I was already up for hours before they woke up. They slept in, and they slept hard. And so they were like freaking out, and they had their own experiences. And one of my favorite things that they said in the debriefs afterwards was that, you know, technically we are doing something that even a physician cannot do. You know, physicians are this glorified career, and we learn something, and we are exercising something that they are not able to do. We are consulting with the source of medicine, the Western medicine, the way that we know it now, and we're consulting with the source. And with that, we're able to do things that not even a doctor can do. And so they really valued that learning. And so these are the kind of things that I play around with in using medicine as a way to teach about the importance and love of learning, I guess, is just establishing these connections and providing these experiences. The last thing that I wanted to say, because so that provides the motivation and inspiration, usually just within the individual to not, you know, stop their learning journey when I'm gone, because I usually only have a couple of days with them or something. So in my very short times that I have with kids, that's the sort of process that I use, and it's super, super fun. But the last thing that I kind of wanted to share, that's a really good idea, or that I think is a really good idea, is just allowing or creating the opportunity for an individual to position themselves where they're at. Yeah, people do land acknowledgements all the time, and it's kind of cool at first. Now it sounds like a chore that everybody's forced to do. But when when you're looking at a plant, you're observing a plant in the natural world, it is doing what it's supposed to do. It's serving its ecological function. It's being a filter. It's sharing nutrients. It's being food. It's doing what it's supposed to do within the natural world. Humans are the only creature that is outside of that instinct, where we can see a plant and understand it has a gift. It has more potential than just that ecological function. It can be food, utility, medicine. It can be all these different things. And so what we do, like for medicine, is we see a plant, serving its ecological function. We could remove it from that, and we can remove the plant from that ecology and kill it, dry it out, remove all of the water from it. Water is where the life of the plant is contained. And so remove all of the water, just kill it. And so it's dead to that function. And so we bring it home and we dry out our medicine, and then we process it and we make tea. It's always tea. So you put this medicine, you put this plant back in water to bring it back to life, to serve a whole new purpose, to be our medicine, or to be our food, or something like this, right? Everything is dried. And so when you're doing this, you're giving a medicine, a plant, the opportunity to live to its fullest potential, to exercise gifts that it has. And so, I'm a father. My daughter's 7, and my worst fear, totally, my worst fear is that if I ever have to watch my daughter not live to her fullest potential, to have gifts and to not exercise them. That's probably one of the most horrible things that I could ever be forced to endure. So I'll do everything that I can to make sure that it doesn't happen. And so when we extend that same idea to plants, we are looking at this whole learning journey, this whole adventure of engaging in the Schnabelmschicke and plant knowledge. Then what we're doing is we're giving that plant the opportunity to live to its fullest potential, to exercise other gifts that it has. And so it's a really amazing sort of way to kind of understand that, this is necessary. This is a necessary knowledge that we all need to have if we want to be living in this part of the world. These are knowledges that are necessary, and so necessary for us, necessary for the plants. Because when you're engaging in a reciprocal relationship with a plant, you're helping that population. It's helping you, and we're happier. Yeah, and so I keep saying the same thing, and I'll write it in the chat. When you have, hopefully it works. Every time I touch something dies on my computer. So we have a word that we use to describe knowledge in the Schnabel language, and we will say "oadzuin" is knowledge. And so I'll just put it in the chat there for you guys. Oadzuin is knowledge, and when you, in the Schnabel language, if you every sound means something else. Every sound does something to the word. So I always use my last name as an example, is Pitawanakwat. We'll say Bidantkwat. It's talking about a cloud. Antkwat is a cloud. And you can talk about Ankwat all day. Ankwat, like whatever. When you put a B in the front of the word and you say Bidantkwat, that's a cloud that you need to be able to see. A cloud that's right in front of you, kind of like staring at you in the face, physically manifested. This cloud is. And so when you That's what the B sound does when you put it at the beginning of a word. So you take a watsuin, our word for knowledge, and you want to make knowledge become physical. You want to manifest knowledge in a physical, demonstratable form. You would say bimadzuin. And bimadzuin is also the word that we use to describe life itself. Life is knowledge that is being demonstrated in front of you. And the higher quality of your life is determined by the amount of knowledge that you have or are able to exercise. And so that as well makes learning necessary. And to say, and medicine knowledge is something that we need to be able to live. And then plus everything else that we're chatting about. But I'll just keep yelling all week long if you let me. I was probably way over my time limit anyways. But I guess I could or should stop there. Is that okay?
That's perfect, Joseph, for sure. Thank you so much. Are you done? Okay, I see my screen.
I was gonna say you can keep. I changed seats. This is not the right side. I'm all can't even see me.
You're just a silhouette, Dakota.
Yeah, I'll switch back to that.
I think that was just amazing. You could probably, we could see from the chat box, everyone is saying like absolutely amazing. Thank you. So much knowledge. And I just want to highlight a few key points that's a few participants mentioned in the chat box. So Jennifer Ferguson said, I will never be able to unsee this. So everything that you're talking about today in a short amount of time. So neither would the students. And she says, learning is relevant, meaningful, real world, connected, and way more. Land-based, it's place-based, connected in a way that she has no words for. Amazing. And that's very true, especially when you're talking about the young 7-year-old with JRA, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, who wanted to make medicine himself. And that goes into what Jonah Hupfield was saying, is that it helps the youth to build their inquiry and relates it to like their self. Lloyd mentioned, what insight, it's amazing. Love the idea of giving a plant a chance to live to its fullest potential. And we can relate that to what we learned in the training so far, is the circle of courage, is that we want the person, the child, the spirit of them to be fully cherished, and their natural gifts to come out. And I just want to mention those few comments from the chat box earlier. Stephanie, the last comment, I'm excited to share some of these non-human understandings with students. Okay, so that's awesome. So again, thank you so much, Joseph. And Dakota and I are going to just relate a little bit of what you're talking about to the course content in regards to like the 4 directions that we've covered, land-based education, and so on. So as far as I understand, like just in the short amount of time that you were speaking, Joseph, like a lot of the content that you covered, but plant medicine is like crucial to who we are. So your connection to yourself, connection to community, connection to the creation story, that plays like a pivotal role for youth to see, their place in the world. And as soon as they see their place in the world and how they connect with everything, then they can make all those connections. They can understand how they relate to medicines and medicines relate to them. And there's that reciprocal relationship that we have. So there's the creation story that comes in. And I know like in this territory, Ojibwe territory I'm in, I'm the Nipissing First Nation. But there's the one book I could share the resource. It's the Mishomis book. And there's a really excellent resource. It's written by Eddie Benton Benai, and he talks about the creation story and how humans were created last, but we were created with the responsibility to take care of the earth. And so that's important for you to understand. And we're caretakers, we can understand our relation to the plants and how we take care of the plants so the plants can take care of us. Everything that you mentioned, what your experience with plants, It's especially when you were talking about here, take, feel the plant, touch it, see it, smell it, take it apart. What does it remind you of? It gives that, the kids the experiential learning. And for my own experience, that's how I grew up. I grew up like that on the land with my mom, my dad, playing. I climbed and studied like every rock, every tree, I know where the waters flowed, what bushes, what plants to eat, and so on. So I'm bringing all of that, my knowledge, and bringing it forward and sharing it to my own kids as well. And with raising my own kids, I gave them the opportunity to experience all of that hands-on and that. Yeah, so those are just a few connections right there that I wanted to bring in. Another one that you mentioned, Joseph, is geo-regional, like learning if your region, learn about your region, what's available in your region, what resources are available. Do you even have trees? Are you in the tundra where there's no trees? Like, what kind of plants are available there? Maybe it's more the Arctic, I don't know, resources that come from the waters there and the small plants. Yeah, so that's a few parts that I want to mention right there. Lots of questions. Yes, we'll share the book, Eddie Benton Benai. How much knowledge? Here's a question from Robert, and then I'll move over to Dakota. How much knowledge has been gained from observing the behavior of animals and their use of specific plants for wounds and parasites? Exactly, that's a great question. Observation is key to Indigenous ways of knowing, ways of doing, ways of being, observing the land and observing the animals to how they interact with the land. So I'll pass it over to Dakota, and Dakota can make a few connections there as well. And then we'll open it up to everyone to have an opportunity to ask questions or discuss.
Awesome. Thank you, Tammy. Yeah, so one of the things that really stood out to me during your presentation, Joseph, and I've watched your videos on online and have been in other presentations, and so I'm always, my mind's always blown just by the plethora of knowledge that you have around Muskeiki and the uses of that, but also language. And somebody mentioned earlier, that they always learn something when they watch you, and I would definitely kind of jump behind that statement as well. But I think in the context of this training and in the context of the direction that we're in right now, the North direction where we're talking about giving back and community building, is that as you were sharing your stories and experiences that you've had with youth in the work that you're doing, it just kind of had me reflecting on the seamless way to create community when you're out on the land, when you're working with creation, when you're working with the land. It's one of the things that we're talking about in this direction of these are different things you can do to create community, to build community. But I think one of the things that I really got from your stories was that, creation is community. And so by us engaging with, creation, whether it's being in the bush, whether it's utilizing, birch bark or saplings to create wigwam, to create, the sweat lodge, to create a canoe, whether it's using medicines, by just being there, that's where we are creating community. We are, entering community, if you will, in a way, right? It always seems to be, these discussions always seem to be, how do we create this without even realizing that it's actually there already because we're part of creation, right? And so that was one of the things that really stood out to me when you were sharing, because the stories you were sharing, it's by just having students engaging, coming together and engaging with creation, that sense of community was just naturally kind of there, right? And I think it's always going to be there because it's an innate community, if you will, right? We tend to separate these discussions. So to me, it just really kind of drove home that point, that creation is community, and when we go back to it, it's just us going back to community in a way, and how seamless that can happen by just engaging with it. The other piece as well, Tammy, you mentioned the circle of courage, and as I was thinking about that, I think the work that you're doing and any work that anybody does on the land can really embrace those four fundamental values or spirits of the circle of courage, which is a sense of belonging, a sense of mastery, a sense of independence, and a sense of generosity. And if we think about those four values, Joseph, in your story, when you were sharing about creating and having students, make their own arthritis medicine, that hits every single one of those values. There's a sense of belonging by them gathering together, by them learning with each other and learning about their own experiences, their own history, their own community, and the land that's, that they're around. And by them gathering in that way and by them learning together, that sense of belonging, that spirit is being fed, I guess, if you will. That sense of mastery by you teaching them, what medicines to use and how to gather that medicine, and how to, as you said, have that medicine live up to its fullest potential. By you teaching them that, they were able to do that themselves, right? And so now they're feeding that spirit of mastery, independence. When you sent them home, when they willingly said, oh yeah, I could use this for myself, but I could also use this for my family, now they're independently taking that knowledge and are doing it themselves. And then the generosity aspect where they did it for their families. So for me, that story was really, really, it really hit home around that circle of courage and how it embraces all four of those values. And I think, that story touches on that, but I think generally all land-based knowledge and all land-based learning, as long as we're kind of gathering on the land and as long as we're, sharing those knowledges and our stories and experiences together, that will naturally happen in a way. And I think for us, it's about facilitating it a little bit at times, right? Or kind of guiding, I guess, if you will. And so those are just some of the thoughts that came to my mind, especially when you mentioned that, Tammy, the circle of courage. So I just wanted to kind of highlight those pieces because those are just phenomenal. And, I think for me, it got me thinking about that framework a little bit differently, because I've been analyzing that framework and I've been doing research on that framework for our mentorship program, but it's always been in the context of in class and at camp, which at camp is still on the land. But it just got me thinking about the connection and how, again, seamlessly that can happen when we're out on the land. So I just wanted to say miigwech for your stories, and great work.
Thank you, Dakota. All right, so I think we're going to open it up now to the floor. Anyone that has questions or comments, they can either put your hand up, use your reactions down below and use the hand up feature, or you can use the chat box. And Johanna also mentioned too that when you were talking to Dakota about the circle of courage, I think she was referring to as using that as an experiential rubric, an assessment piece.
Patty, are you, I see your mic's on, Patty. The camera's off though.
Sorry.
There we go.
First, Joseph, I just wanted to say thank you. I really appreciated getting to sit and listen to that, and it connected to so much of our work in our land camp and so many other programs. And I just really genuinely appreciated also your enthusiasm and passion with how you spoke and shared it. So for me, the pieces that really stood out in terms of connecting back to our work were the importance of language speakers and knowledge keepers and those nurturing guides. And sometimes, if we look at education, we sometimes see teachers or kind of these categories of educators. And I think for me, it just continues to expand our understanding and the importance of having individuals who can help be that conduit and who can see the gifts that so many children have and help, find a way to ignite that learning and that passion and be that kind of at times translation of the word, but, helping them connect. And I think that's just such a significant piece. And I really wanted to, again, highlight that in all aspects of our programming, because for us, if I look back at our land camp, I remember going and meeting with Norm when we were first looking at the layout of the camp and where things were going to go and how the sessions and how days were going to go. And everything built off of something, like everything had purpose. And and, you know, where people were positioned, what activities were happening. Everything was just so based on the concept of community and individuals having a sense of belonging within community, and right down to the cooks and, you know, every aspect of our camp. And again, as an administrator or someone who helps facilitate these camps and doing all those pieces, it helps us look at how we set these experiential land-based learning camps up a little bit differently. So again, I just wanted to say thank you so much. I really appreciate everything that you shared today.
Thank you. That's awesome.